together. Here we go again.
Another double bloody.
You'll do whatever it takes to keep the good times rolling.
Let's go, ladies. It's time to blast our glutes.
Best night ever.
A comedy about lovers
Did she say the sex was bad?
Every relationship.
and friends.
None of us has made a new friend in like 11 years.
Happy endings. Saturday night at 9 on Channel 96 ViuTV6. The hottest local news, trending international stories, weekly review, topics that affect our communities, in-depth analyses and opinions. All that you need is in one place. Weekly review. Sunday night at 9 on ViuTV6.
Thanks for joining us for this latest edition of ViuTV News. I'm Patrick Fogg. Coming up, Trump in Japan. The US leader vows to stand with its close ally against North Korean menace. The US wakes up to another mass shooting as 26 people are killed at a church in Texas. And yet more revelations emerge about the world's wealthiest people avoiding tax as millions of documents called the Paradise Papers are leaked. Okay, we begin with the latest on Donald Trump's marathon tour of Asia. Trade topped the agenda on his second day in Japan, with the US leader vowing to push for a free and balanced partnership between the countries. Earlier, Diane To, who's in Tokyo, gave us more details on what was discussed.
Yes, a major focus of Trump's trip to Japan is on trade, obviously. He began the day meeting business leaders, talking about America suffering massive trade deficits to Japan over many years. And he's making a point that he wants this relationship to become reciprocal. That said, he did add this would be done in a friendly way. Now, after meeting with Abe, he said Washington would work with Tokyo to sort out problems on trade, but all the while keeping up that positive atmosphere by pointing out that relations with Tokyo is better than they have ever had. Now, eyebrows were raised when he pointed fingers at Japanese car makers, telling them to, quote, try building cars in the US instead of shipping them over. Now, that caused a bit of confusion with automakers, with data from last year, in fact, showing 3/4 of Japanese branded cars are actually manufactured in North America. Now, Japan's Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga said later it's been explained to the US Japan's contribution in creating jobs there and that they want to continue the bilateral economic dialogue.
All right. Well, you can certainly see why that's caused some confusion, particularly because it has been discussed in the past. But anyway, the other issue, of course, in focus is obviously North Korea. What's come of today's talks with Shinzo Abe on that?
Well, today was a show of force, one of unity against a rogue nation that is Pyongyang. The U.S. president said America stood with ally Japan against the North Korean menace, repeating his mantra that the era of strategic patience was over. Abe, meanwhile, said Japan backed Trump's stance that all options are on the table and that the two countries are together on the issue. He also said it was time to exert maximum pressure on Pyongyang, agreeing with Trump that China should play a bigger role in dealing with a hermit country. And that's exactly the kind of backing Trump wants on display before he heads off to Beijing.
Diane To there in Tokyo. Well, Trump's next stop is South Korea, where the North Korean issue is likely to take center stage again. And just before he touches down in the country, Seoul has imposed sanctions on 18 North Koreans. As Grace Lee reports, it's part of efforts to dry up illegal cash flows in the north.
A day before Donald Trump touches down in South Korea, Seoul is tightening the economic noose around Pyongyang. 18 North Koreans linked to the banking sector have been hit with unilateral sanctions this Monday, barring them from financial transactions with anyone in the South as part of international efforts to dry up the secretive country's illegal cash flows.
We hope this will contribute to blocking North Korea's main sources of income and its development of weapons of mass destruction.
Trump arrives in Seoul on Tuesday, and dealing with North Korea is a key focus of his visit to Asia, where he's expected to speak at length about the country's nuclear weapons program. The new sanctions are seen as largely symbolic, although government officials deny they're tied to Trump's visit. Either way, they'll ultimately have little impact to Pyongyang's illegal activities, as all trade and financial exchanges have been barred since early 2010 after a South Korean warship was torpedoed by the North.
Well, to the US now, where another mass shooting has claimed dozens of lives. A gunman opened fire at a church in southern Texas, killing at least 26 people, including children. Evelina Leung has more.
The latest mass shooting in the U.S. has struck the small town of Sutherland Springs, Texas, outside San Antonio. Members of the First Baptist Church were in the middle of their Sunday morning worship service when a gunman walked in and opened fire. By the time he stopped, 26 people were dead and 24 more injured. The youngest victim was only 5 and the oldest 72. Among them, the 14-year-old daughter of the church's pastor. President Donald Trump, who's on a 12-day trip through Asia, extended condolences to the victims.
Our hearts are broken, but in dark times, and these are dark times, such as these, Americans do what they do best. We pull together. We join hands, we lock arms, and through the tears and through the sadness, we stand strong, oh so strong.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott called it an evil act.
The tragedy, of course, is worsened by the fact that it occurred in a church, a place of worship, where these people were innocently gunned down. We mourn their loss, but we support their family members.
Police say the gunman was found dead in a neighboring county. They described him only as a white male in his 20s, but media reports identify him as Devin Kelly, a military vet from a nearby town. They say he was armed with what appeared to be an assault rifle. The attack comes on the heels of the worst mass shooting in U.S. history, when a man armed with assault rifles killed 58 people at a country music festival in Las Vegas. Now, this small town in southeastern Texas will become part of the continuing debate over gun laws in the U.S.
All right, turning to Saudi Arabia now, where the future king has tightened his grip on power through an anti-corruption purge that's seen 11 royals, ministers and investors arrested. This includes Prince Al-Walid bin Talal, the king's nephew. Sources say the allegations against Prince Al-Walid include money laundering, bribery and extorting officials. For more on that, here's our Middle East correspondent Naweed Jabakil.
It's been an eventful weekend in Saudi Arabia, where late on Saturday, King Salman set up a new anti-corruption committee with broad-ranging powers to be headed up by his son, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Within hours, several of the country's leading business and political elite were rounded up, including one of the world's richest men, Prince Al-Walid bin Talal, whose investment firm Kingdom Holding owns stakes in global banking giant Citigroup, tech firm Apple, and Chinese online retailer JD.com, among many others. According to Saudi officials speaking to Reuters, the charges against those detained, which includes 11 princes, 4 ministers and tens of former ministers, range from embezzlement to money laundering, bribery and even abuse of power. Important to stress that those claims, as serious as they are, haven't been independently verified. But what's clear is that Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is looking to send a clear message with this crackdown that nobody is beyond reach. Inevitably, though, many analysts see this as a power grab by Prince Mohammed to try and remove any obstacles to his rule and ensure his eventual succession to the throne. Given the murky and conservative as well nature of Saudi Arabian politics, exact details may be slow to come, but one thing's for sure is that these events have really stunned most people across this region, given just how high profile many of the individuals are.
Meantime, Lebanon's Shiite Hezbollah group has accused Saudi Arabia of forcing Saad al-Hariri to step down as prime minister. Syed Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Iran-backed Hezbollah, said legitimate questions were being asked over whether Hariri had been detained in Saudi Arabia. Hariri had said there was a plot to kill him and accused Hezbollah and its Iranian backers of sowing strife in the Arab world. Up next, the latest from the world of business. All right, well, let's start by taking a look at what was a pretty tough day for Hong Kong's markets. More than a few investors will be catching their breath after a roller coaster session that saw stocks plunge mid-morning. The Hang Seng Index recovered, though, thanks largely to tech stocks, and finished down around 0.02%. On the corporate front, big news for Cathay Pacific and its shareholders. Hong Kong's Kingboard Chemical has said it's agreed to sell its 9.6% stake in the airline to Middle Eastern carrier Qatar Airways for a cool $5.16 billion. Kingboard stands to make around $800 million on the sale, which was its entire stake. Cathay shares have risen by about 30% since the start of January, despite the airline in August posting its worst first-half loss in 20 years. The Qatari carrier, meanwhile, dropped plans in August to buy a stake of almost 5% in American Airlines Group. Turning to currencies and record profits here in the SAR, the Hong Kong Exchange Fund, which is used to back the Hong Kong dollar, has posted investment income of nearly $54 billion in the third quarter of the year. That's according to the Hong Kong Monetary Authority. It's a 26% increase compared to last year.
For the first 3 quarters, we already make a record for the investment return. And I would therefore suggest that while we're looking at the good result this year, we should also think about the ultimate objective of the Exchange Fund, which is a long-term liquidity pool to support Hong Kong to deal with financial and monetary stability issues.
Now, almost 18 months ago, a law firm in Central America released what became known as the Panama Papers. They contained details of systematic tax evasion by multinational companies and very wealthy individuals. Now, journalists have been able to release the so-called Paradise Papers, which shed even more light on how the world's richest people legally avoid paying tax. Samantha Vardas has the details.
From US politicians to British royalty, a trove of leaked documents from an offshore law firm is casting a spotlight on some of the world's wealthiest people. The files have been dubbed the Paradise Papers and obtained by a German newspaper from Appleby, a legal firm based in Bermuda with offices in many of the world's tax havens. Among those mentioned in the papers, US Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross and Britain's Queen Elizabeth. According to US media, Ross has been keeping investments in a shipping firm with significant business ties to Russian President Vladimir Putin's inner circle, although the Department of Commerce says Ross wasn't involved in any business decisions with Russian shareholders. Meanwhile, Britain